everyone, my name is Rosemary, and today I'm going to talk about the ethical dilemma of the whistleblower. So next we have speaking up is hard. And so speaking up has always been something that's super difficult for lots of people, and this is because it comes with lots of fears. And these fears can range from a fear to disappoint others, a fear to stand out, and then also a fear to pick a side. But opposing this fear, there's also a desire and a pull to do the right thing and speak your truth. So countless individuals are placed in these situations where they're scared to stand out, they're scared to do something that is kind of against the grain, but they have this desire to do the right thing and to kind of speak their truth. And so these situations can come in a bunch of different settings. It happens all the time with our family, with our friends, in school environments, but one of the biggest ones that it does happen in is in the work environment. And so lots of employees have this fear. They have a fear of losing their job, they have a fear of the refusal for different promotions, and then also a fear of just being treated differently in the work environment if they are to stand up and kind of go against the norm. But they also have this desire that they don't want to be stuck with this burden of kind of sitting in the background and going along these different things that are kind of against their morals, because they are scared of kind of not sticking true to themselves. And so this happens a lot where they're scared of the employers and they're kind of put in these places where they kind of don't really know what to do. And so I'm going to talk about later kind of a system that works to kind of fix the situation and get people to kind of have a moral guide of how to navigate it. And so now we're going to talk about whistleblowers and the frameworks that kind of fall into being a whistleblower. So whistleblower, they're known as people who actively make wrongdoings known to the public. They do this when they see something that they know is wrong in the organization, and they kind of make the step to kind of tell the press and tell the people of the community what is going on in their organization. And so it's really important to talk about these whistleblowers because it leaves room for discussions for ethics, morals, and values in the work environment. And then virtue ethics and utilitarianism are the two frameworks that kind of fall into this area. And so virtue ethics, as we know, is the quest to understand to live a life of moral character. And then utilitarianism is defined as an ethical theory that determines right from wrong, focusing on the outcomes. So next we're going to talk about the moral rebel. And so it's really important to talk about the moral rebel before we get into the complexities of kind of what motivates the whistleblower. And so Catherine Sanderson, a psychologist from Amherst College, did a study on what the moral rebel is and kind of what motivates them and what kind of people they are. And she uses 3 different examples from some politicians and different people in professional roles. And so in these examples, there are these people who stood up against crowds who were in super influential roles and kind of really took a stand, and they got lots of backlash from it and kind of created a huge uproar because they were really standing against things that people did not expect them to kind of call out and say was wrong in their organizations and in their industries. And so kind of the through line with all these 3 examples is these 3 people had this huge desire to do the right thing. And obviously the right thing is very subjective and it kind of depends on what perspective they were in, but them and themselves in this moral role, they really felt like they were compelled to speak up against what was going on. So the article by Sanderson is really important because conducting a study on the moral rebel has really opened the door to kind of looking at the intricacies that go on throughout the whistleblower. And so as mentioned earlier, the concept of studying the moral rebel is really important when discussing business ethics due to the similarities of how they both operate within society. And so in the industries and organizations, incidents will arise over time that need to be addressed, and this is when the whistleblower comes in to deal with those incidents. So with all the information, now comes the dilemma. So I mentioned earlier the consequences that occur when people do speak up, so the fear of losing your job, the fear of being treated differently by others. Those ones are also very real, but on the other side, there's the consequences of staying silent. So looking at the 2 frameworks we talked about earlier, utilitarianism and virtue ethics, there very much so are these big consequences of staying silent. So with the virtue ethics approach, it's really big on not losing your integrity. So obviously you're on that quest to be the most moral person you can be, trying to be honest, brave, and strong. And so if you stay silent and you see an issue occurring and you're kind of not stepping up into that plate like you know you can, you're losing your integrity by not staying true to yourself. So with that situation, if you were following a virtue ethics approach, the whistleblower would see the incident and then would report it. Similarly with utilitarianism, it's kind of the same approach, but as we know, they're kind of focused on the greater good for the greatest number of people. And with this situation, obviously harm's going to be done. Harm's going to be done to yourself potentially if something does occur. It's also going to be done to the person who's doing the wrongdoing. If you do speak up, there's going to be consequences for this person who did this wrong thing, but they kind of weigh that against the good of what's going to happen if it does get reported and helps this organization, helps other organizations. So with the utilitarianism approach, this basically kind of focuses on the outcome of making sure that everyone's going to be okay in the situation. So basically with these 2 frameworks, the dilemma is kind of solved, but it's also still hard because not everyone can look at these frameworks and be able to navigate so clearly within them. So yeah, it's basically the biggest dilemma with a whistleblower is choosing the right thing to do with both consequences.